So let's talk turkey, creative and marketing, hiring and compensation trends you need to know for 2022. We will be listening to Amy Mangan of Robert Half, and she will be going through these categories of the Robert Half salary guide for 2022. So we'll start in marketing and creative trends and salaries, which will be followed by a Q&A. So put your questions in the chat or in the Q&A feature, and we will get them over to Amy. We'll go into national hiring trends, perks and benefits, and then diversity, equity, and inclusion to close it up. So instead of us just talking at you for the whole time, we'll break it up with questions and make it way interactive. So if you want to chime in with any details, your own experience, put it in the chat and we're happy to respond. So Amy Mangan is Vice President and Branch Director of Robert Half's Marketing and Creative Practice in Atlanta. She has 15 years of recruiting and consulting experience. Together with her team, Amy fills positions in the creative, marketing, and digital fields with a variety of clients in both in-house and agency environments. Amy's knowledge base includes insight into job search strategies, career advice, career pivoting, mentorship, and current local and national industry trends. So with that, I will pass it over to Amy to tell us what's going on out there.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Hey, I'm Amy Mangan, and I'm really excited to share the Robert Half 2022 salary guide with you. So we're going to start with the section that, hang on for 1 second, that is, all right. You guys good? You can see me?
Good.
Super. We're going to start with the section that's geared specifically to the marketing and creative industry. So we're going to chat through this. I'm not going to get super in depth about the actual salaries themselves because I can send this link to you after. You can dig into your own. But one thing I do want to point out is that if you're local to Atlanta, put in the Atlanta zip code and it's going to reconfigure to the local average, which is about 7.5% higher than the national average. Depending on the city, that number is going to change. And so if you're a hiring manager and you're looking to potentially hire talent in another city, or you yourself are looking for like a remote job and that company's based elsewhere, it's a good idea to maybe look at those local numbers too, to make sure that you're in line with the positions. And then with just various sections, you pop it down and it has, readjusted all of the rates. So I'm just going to put that in there. We're not going to dig too much into that though. You can look at that on your own time. So hiring trends and marketing and creative. So the good news is that it is getting very busy in our industry. Once again, really happy to report that. So 54% of marketing and creative managers responded to our survey saying that they're planning to hire going into next year. Many of them are actually really ramping up, frankly, their freelance and contract pool of talent right now to get them over the hump into early next year before they have additional headcounts approved and things like that. And this number is interesting. So marketing and creative leaders told us that it takes on average over 3 weeks to staff non-management roles. The reality that we're seeing, at least in the local market in Atlanta, when companies are not using any kind of talent solutions firm or not using any kind of outside help, frankly, it's taking months to fill jobs. Like months. A lot of clients will come to us because, hey, this job's been open for 2.5, 3 months. It's really urgent. This work needs to get done. The rest of my team is stressed and we are barely getting any resumes sent to us from the postings that we have out. Or we've put out a few offers and they haven't been accepted, or we thought we had somebody, but then they didn't start. There's a lot of that going on in the market with all of the market movement and shifts happening. So, good news is there's a lot of hiring, there's a lot of jobs. The bad news is it's not as easy to hire as it once was. And a lot of companies are really reaching out to specialized solutions firms because they can cut down on the amount of time it takes to hire, like in half. So that's always helpful. So what's driving hiring right now? We're definitely continuing to see that e-commerce and digital project driving the strategy behind hiring. There was obviously a big e-commerce boom and digital transformation that was accelerated due to COVID. And so those are the skill sets that we're seeing that's driving the hiring, right? So we're seeing a lot of like UX and UI roles who are creating great interfaces that are going to help people's digital experience. And then a lot of digital marketing, analytics, and other content strategy roles have been extremely hot for us. And that's nationally speaking, but that's been reflected in the Atlanta market for sure. And that's also perm jobs as well as contract or contract to hire positions as well. A lot of times in Atlanta, what we'll see is that if it's an execution level role where the person will ultimately be responsible for putting out tangible work, usually clients are asking for those positions to start in a contract to hire basis because they really want to make sure that the work is aligned and the candidate's happy and a good fit, on both ends. So down in this next section, the true words, the retention struggle is real. So I don't know, maybe in the chat, if you want to put in some notes about anything you've seen on your own teams, but every day I log into LinkedIn and my notifications feed is like lit up with people who've changed jobs, changed teams, made complete shifts like into a different, not necessarily different industry, but like changing to a new level of role, or lots of movement in the market. And so what happens sometimes as a result of all those very positive and happy and good changes is that that work falls back onto the existing team where the person was previously working. Like I said, it takes a really long time to fill roles right now. So because of that, that workload is sort of a sustained additional workload, which ultimately can create additional retention and hiring issues down the road, right? So it becomes a little bit of a vicious cycle. And so it's just been really challenging to keep top talent on teams. 46% of respondents and creative and marketing employees said that they feel more burned out now than they did a year ago. And we did this survey a year ago, they were really burned out. So that means they're like super duper duper burned out now. People have just been shouldering a lot in their teams that were, in many cases larger than they larger in the past than they are now. And so, some of the reason for some of this attrition that we're seeing, folks held off on promoting people, giving raises, et cetera, during the pandemic. A lot of times like management left, like key decision makers left positions. So then that held up further down promotions and raises and things like that on the food chain. And it's just, it's really important to take an honest look around your team and say, like, are these people doing too much? Are they working the job of what used to be 3 separate individuals and now one person's handling all of that? Like, really taking an honest look at that and then adjusting, paying more, hiring, reaching out to, specialized solution firms, whatever you need to do to make sure that your team is in a good place, because the most important thing you can do is hold on to your good top players and pay them well and make sure that they're taken care of, because it's that much harder to replace them nowadays once they, eventually make the move somewhere else. Employers are stepping up. So 47% of companies are saying they're offering more paid time off heading into 2022. I know our company's given us another holiday next year, which is cool. 32% of workers are saying that they want to continue working, or our employers are giving the option to continue working remotely. A lot of companies in Atlanta, we're hearing sort of January is the return to office date. And in most cases, like 99% of the clients that I've spoken with, they'll be on some sort of hybrid schedule. And in a later section, we'll talk a little bit more about what employees are saying they want specifics of the hybrid schedule looks like. But if it might be interesting, a poll, if you want to type in the chat, of how many days a week on average would you like to sit in an office in a hybrid schedule? So how many days a week would you be willing to go on site? Would be an interesting question to kind of see where people's heads are at and see if it aligns when we get to the other section for perks and benefits. So the hottest jobs in the Atlanta, in the national marketing and creative space are listed below. Now, obviously, these are alphabetical. They're not in any kind of order, not necessarily content strategist is number one. But this is absolutely reflected in the jobs that we've seen over the past 6 to 8 months in Atlanta for both contract and full-time roles. So This is a good kind of snapshot and definitely reflective of those e-commerce digital projects kind of driving the trends behind hiring. In-demand skill sets very much in line with supporting the skills needed for these jobs. So that's not a huge surprise. And the industries that are most often hiring for creative and marketing on a national level are e-commerce, financial services firms, healthcare, insurance, professional services, and technology. We are absolutely starting to see retail and agency coming back. It's gotten quite busy in that space in the last few months since this survey and research was done. So if you have any questions about this section, I will be happy to take them. And I'm not in the chat, but I'm gonna stop sharing my screen so that I can interact and chat and see you guys. Courtney, I don't know, are there any specific questions?
There are no questions. Did you mention that you would leave a link to this in the chat at the end?
Good point. Yes, I will. I will
Okay,
do that.
wonderful. Okay, great.
And actually, if for some reason you miss it, you can grab my contact info here, my QR code, and send me a note and I'll get it to you that way too. So, and you wrote
Otherwise,
the Great Resignation. I'm really curious if anybody, feels like they're alone on an island at this point after seeing a lot of change on their own teams. I'm hearing about that from candidates and clients frequently, actually. And it's interesting looking through the days that people would be willing to go on site, because there's definitely, I'd say the lower end seems to be the norm, but there are a few people who definitely seem like they miss the office and they want to get back, and that's totally a personal choice. I think a lot of that has to do with your situation at home too. Like, are you comfy? Do you have a beautiful working space like Courtney does, or are you over it and it's craziness at your house?
I see Jose is raising his hand. If it's not a mistake, I will allow him to ask a question.
Oh, sorry. Was a mistake.
Oh, it was a mistake. Well, nice to see you.
Nice
Thank
to
you.
meet you. Oh, there's some in the Q&A here. So Mike said, are you seeing a lot of title inflation as companies try to attract talent? Yes, I am. Absolutely. Yes. I mean, I don't know what to say other than that it's totally happening. That usually is a bubble that will eventually burst. Get it while the getting's good, but I would say that a lot of companies are throwing the kitchen sink, which we'll talk more about in an upcoming section, in order to attract and retain talent right now. There's another one. If I'm located in Atlanta, but the company I'm interviewing with is based in New York, which city governs the pay rate? So interesting debate these days. Elaine, I hope I'm saying your name right. So there's two schools of thought on that, but when it ultimately comes down to paying your taxes, it's where you sit. Just so you know that. You wouldn't be paying New York City taxes, you'd be paying Atlanta taxes, or where, whatever part of town you're in, which is good. That's good news. However, I always tell people to go, for what's equivalent to the local team where the company is based. However, a lot of companies are trying to take advantage of, I don't mean that in a negative or derogatory way, but like they're trying to get good talent now in this new environment where most people are remote or they can be remote, and hoping to be able to secure some really solid talent by not underpaying them, but by paying them a fair and maybe even really aggressive rate for the market in which they sit. So Atlanta in your case, but still saving money on their own. So we've seen a lot of companies like on the West Coast and Silicon Valley, for instance, giving really solid offers to people in Atlanta. Maybe this candidate is like locally, maybe like an 80K candidate, but they are getting an offer from this company out West on the West Coast that's 100K. That's a nice raise. Nobody should shake a stick at that. Like, that's good. But maybe if they were hiring in the local market, they'd be paying 125, 130, who knows, So I always say, do your research, play with that salary guide, go for the local numbers, And worst case they can say is no, but at least you kind of like started high. You know what I mean? So I go for it. Ask, always ask. And then Suzanne asks, will there be a lot more jobs in January or about the same as December? So most years, I would say, yeah, it kind of like tends to slow down with full-time jobs. Sometimes at the end of the year, it depends. Like it really depends on the year. This is not one of those years. It is equally as busy now as we expect it to be in January. Yes, scheduling interviews, getting things to move forward. Like there will be still those hiccups that occur around the holidays with people and decision makers out of the office and traveling and candidates doing the same for that matter. But at the end of the day, I think that this is a really exceptional year where people are setting themselves up for a strong 2022 and they want to get their ducks in a row now. And they're very aggressively hiring now to have people who've gone through the hiring process, given their 2 weeks notice and started now. Now, what I'll say to you is if you're in a current full-time permanent position, I would not advise you to hold off and wait to start your job search if you're really serious about looking in January, because a lot of people do that, right? So there's a sort of a candidates flood the market at that particular moment in time every year. And you could get a jump start on the job search and maybe get in with a place that is looking now that other people will miss the boat on because they're waiting till January. And a lot of folks do choose to wait ultimately because they want to get that year-end bonus that they're holding off for. So one thing you can do, I'm not saying this will work, but like it's a tip you could try, is to figure out what that year-end bonus looks like. And then when you're negotiating with the new company, say, look, I need a signing bonus in order to sign because I'm leaving this on the table over here. So ask for it, try it. You never know, could potentially work. I hope that helps. And then Corey said, employer inflexible with raises and promotions, work increases, wait it out or go. I mean, I can't ever tell someone to leave a job, right? That's not my job. You need to know that in your heart and feel like that's right for you. But given the current market conditions and how hot this market is right now, I do not recommend putting up with stuff that doesn't jive for you, because there are other jobs, there are other companies that are hiring. I am not, however, saying quit your job. And I'm definitely not saying quit your job without another job. I'm not saying that, but people are doing it. I'm not saying that.
It's like maybe look what's out there, because there's a lot of stuff out there and people are hungry for talent. So there's an opportunity.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. So, all right, let me just queue up my next thing here for you. We're going to head into national trends now. And so I'm going to share my screen once more and talk a little bit more about what's going on nationally. So the hiring market heats up. So this is, again, not specific necessarily to the creative and marketing space, but it's absolutely reflective of what we're seeing in the industry. So 51% of companies in the US are saying they're hiring perm roles heading into 22. They're ramping up. There's a growing workload. There's a lot of projects that were put on the back burner due to COVID and are being brought to the forefront, and then other just general business as usual tasks, as well as new initiatives that are ramping up. So 22 is really looking to be a very, very busy year for hiring for both perm and contract space across the board, but specifically in creative and marketing and digital, I would say is definitely true. Hiring is exceeding, this says near exceeding, but it is exceeding now as of very recent data, pre-pandemic levels. And I've got some interesting numbers for you. So the national unemployment rate is around 4%. The Atlanta, like Metro Atlanta specific unemployment rate is 2.5%. So we are a busy city, and it certainly feels like it. Also, the national quit rate is at an all-time high of 2.9%. So what that means is people proactively quitting jobs. That doesn't take into consideration whether they have another job lined up or not. It just is people putting a notice and leaving, or maybe they're not even putting a notice That's me. I'm assuming too much there. But the Atlanta quit rate is 4.2%. It's like almost double the national all-time high quit rate. So Atlanta's hopping. It is bustling. And let me say this, companies, to Corey's question, companies that are not being flexible with the way the market's changed are going to have a really hard time keeping people and getting new people. And when it comes to recruiting, the companies that are giving flexibility, they're giving money that's where the market is, and taking into consideration, some things we'll talk about more in perks and benefits. Those are the companies that are attracting and retaining the top talent in the market right now. That's what it boils down to. And one last thing I'll just point out that's not in here, some cool data, is that we're expecting wages to go up about 5% year over year. So that's in general the growth that we've seen. And so when it comes to annual reviews and asking for raises, a lot of companies are usually giving a 1% to 2%, sometimes 3%, but generally speaking, wages are going up 5%. So just keep that number in mind. But obviously you're going to need to do your research. You can't just be like, wages are going up 5%. You got to give me 5%. That's how that works. That's not how that works. But I'm telling you so that you can do your research. So it is a candidate driven market. That is absolutely true. And employers are attracting and retaining top talent by offering signing bonuses. So 48% of companies said that they are. I would say in Atlanta, and specific to creative and marketing, because that's the space that I'm playing in every day, that number is probably higher. And especially end of year when we're heading into Q4, it kind of goes back to what I said, where people are leaving potentially large end of year bonuses on the table, especially since many companies, if your bonus is tied to revenue, like many companies really turn things around this year. And so that could be a great bonus that you're potentially walking away from. So one way to attract and retain top talent, get those signing bonuses to make that a non-issue. The other thing that companies are doing, I'm jumping down, paid time off. So 2 weeks vacation is no longer a thing. We almost never hear about it ever. And when we do, those companies can't hire. So if you are a company and you're offering 2 weeks vacation, just know that that is no longer the norm, and your competition out in the market is not doing that. The other thing that I'll say is not only are companies offering more PTO for their internal existing employees in a lot of cases, but they're also aggressively giving PTO to new employees. So one of the reasons people sometimes get cold feet, just like that bonus that they might be walking out the door on, is all that vacation time that they've accrued. I mean, we've all become accustomed to a lifestyle of like, go where you want, when you want, you can work where, there's a lot more flexibility nowadays. And things are finally starting to open up to where people can take vacation and physically go places again. And people will turn down an offer if there's a big discrepancy in the paid time off. A lot of times it just ultimately doesn't make sense for them or their family or whatever. Like they've got 3 trips planned next year. They have that Europe trip they've pushed off twice. That's 2 weeks. Like there's that kind of stuff. So companies are saying, tell us what you have. Great, we'll match it. Nope, we'll give you more. Like that's kind of a non-issue that's just really being taken off the table so that people can make decisions to figure out what works best for them and their family based on the actual job and probably the financial piece, and not so much like the PTO and the other benefits and things. So just know that if you're either job seeking or you're a hiring manager. And by the way, one other tip on that I'll just say is that unlimited vacation is there's 2 schools of thought on it. There's a lot of research that shows that when there is unlimited vacation, people actually take less than they would if they had a defined amount. So we're starting to see companies having more either like mandatory PTO or very specific, like defined amounts that encourage people to actually take that time. We've heard of cash incentive. Oh, sorry.
Could I interrupt you for a second? There's a relevant question for you regarding PTO. If 2 weeks is no longer the norm, what is the norm? Are you going into that next?
Let's talk about that in perks and benefits. Remind me when we get over there if I don't specifically address it, because I feel like that is a good question. But yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. We're hearing about cash incentives for returning to the office, like literal bonuses for get your butt back to work. And then job title upgrades. So someone had asked about, I think it was Mike had asked about what we're looking at with job titles. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some job title inflation that's occurring, right? But frankly, in some cases, the whole team went down like dominoes around them. They're the last person standing and they have taken on all this extra work. So maybe they jumped 2 levels like overnight, but in some cases, if they stepped up and they got it done, I mean, they're deserving of that too. So, it's situational, but we were absolutely seeing that. I love this chart. I think it is really representative of what's going on in the market. So in our surveys, we're surveying employees in this particular instance. So what is going to happen in order for these people to leave, or what needs to happen for them to stay, right? So almost 50% of folks feel underpaid at the time of this. 46% plan to ask for a raise. And I know a lot of people do like end of year reviews and things. So I think a lot of managers who are, have folks reporting to them should be expecting to hear folks asking for a raise on their team. And a third of them will quit if they don't get the raise. So Corey's question, goes back to that, right? What should I do? I don't know. I'm not telling you what to do, but a third of people are quitting if they don't get that money. 66% of folks are confident that they could find a new job quickly. And 87% feel good that their current skills are marketable. So with the last two, I think it's really interesting because I say this all the time. I'm like, if you have a good portfolio and you're a good human being and you know how to like go out and get a job, you're probably right about the last two, honestly. Like it is, people are getting new jobs daily. It's happening all the time. So don't think that everything is like hunky-dory on your team. You need to maybe be very direct and proactive in your communication with the folks on your team to see where their head's at. Don't think they're all good because they may not be. And I hear from candidates all day who are like, oh my gosh, I'm getting so many calls. I'm not even looking and I'm getting so many calls. People are getting calls on your team. So be aware, be proactive in that communication. This is an interesting statistic. So 34% of workers who are currently working remotely said that they will not stay with their company if they're no longer allowed to remote work moving forward. And so that's, more than a third of people are saying, nope, I'm going to be out of here. And there are a lot of remote jobs posted. There are a ton. A lot of times I'll be on like Indeed or LinkedIn looking at job postings and I'll be like, that's a new company. I've never seen that, but it's listed for Atlanta. And I'll go into it and then I realize, oh, this company's in New York or this company is on the West Coast, or it's really, we see a lot actually like random, like Midwest, like cute little agencies in the Midwest that have decent clients and like, they're pretty cool. And they are posting 100% remote jobs in Atlanta, with Atlanta being the location, but it's 100% remote for a company that's, elsewhere. And so those roles are out there. People are seeing them. They're getting approached by recruiters for them. So companies that aren't willing to play ball, at least, even if they're great local, amazing brands, they're losing folks. Like they just are. So 75% of employees said they want to work remotely at least part of the time. And that was interesting when we were scrolling through kind of what people said their wish list was. And on the perks and benefits section, we'll actually talk a little bit more just specifically about what that day preference looks like for people. And then 66% of companies are still offering flex scheduling after the pandemic. That seems to be the case universally now. I can't think of any companies that are saying, no, you need to be here at 9 a.m. You can't leave till 5. Like that's sort of a thing of the past in my experience. For what we're seeing right now. I mean, in our industry, obviously that's different if you're in a different industry. And then widening the recruiting pool by just purely going fully remote. We're seeing a big trend in Atlanta specifically, where clients are saying, you know what, I know you've got a great team in Charlotte, Raleigh, DC, nearby cities, Birmingham, whatever. And they're like, I'd prefer to see someone from Atlanta, but I'd be willing to look at whoever they may have to, because I think their thought process is, well, that's like, they couldn't come to work once a week or anything. But if we've got a meeting or whatever, that's like a drive. They could make that work. And yes, we may have access to better talent or different talent than we're used to seeing locally, or maybe we'll get somebody more quickly because we're now looking at just a wider net of people. And the other thing is just windowed work, flex scheduling in general. I mean, that is how things are. And so, like I said, I can't think of any teams that aren't working in that capacity now. But if you're in a situation like that, I don't know, that's unusual. I will say that. So employers are definitely expanding the flexible workforce. A lot of companies have sort of over the past year really filled their strategy level management positions. And then those folks are choosing to work with either agencies or talent solutions firms to be able to flex and scale with the work, instead of saying, I need one person who does print design, I need one person who does web design, I need one person who does copy, I need one person who does video, because the projects, like, there's always going to be downtime for various skill sets based on their campaigns and their workflow and things like that. So a lot of companies have really kind of pivoted more to scalable relationships, we'll say. So 38% of companies are using contract talent, and 45% of companies are using more contractors than perm staff. So think about, that's a crazy number. So almost half of companies were like, yes, we have more contractors than full-timers. It's nuts. And then 39% of employees say that they want to pursue contract work for consulting or project-based work in their next career move. And we on my team see a lot of candidates who reach out and they are like, just put my 2 weeks notice in for my full-time job. I want to go full-time contracting, full-time freelancing, have a couple clients, like got my own stuff, but want to get some more stuff. Like there's a lot of that kind of shift happening in the market. And it makes sense because that's how a lot of the work is changing and how a lot of companies are choosing to get work done. So that's pretty much it for this section. So I will unshare and you guys can tell me if there's any questions. Let's see. Okay, so wait, there's a lot here. Okay, wow. All right. Suzanne says, I have 2 interviews and they both went a little over 30 minutes. I asked a lot of questions and answered questions, and I don't have anything left to ask or talk about. However, they're asking me to speak to the CMO. Is that odd? No, that's not odd. That's so normal. Like I'm sorry. Just, yeah, you can, I mean, you got to have some stuff to ask, do your research, but you could always compliment the other folks that you spoke with on how well they answered your questions. You could say, like, I asked them this and they said this. Would you agree with that? Or what would your take on that be? That kind of thing. Okay, anonymous. I am a designer with 15 years. I'm looking to move from a senior design to an art director role. Can you speak to what kind of book would make me attractive to clients? Okay, so yeah, I mean, I think a clean book, keep the work fresh and relevant. We usually say like 5 to 7 year cutoff, maybe 10 years in terms of pieces that you're showing. And it depends on what type of role you're going for. So I mean, I can't necessarily get too into the specifics there, but feel free to hit me up and we can talk more specifics for your personal situation. Okay, if 2 weeks is no longer the PTO, we're gonna hold it on that, right? Okay. Brandy, hi Brandy. Any expectation of more employees leaving or hesitancy to apply due to the OSHA vaccine mandates? So we haven't really seen that yet. And companies like Robert Half or other large talent solutions firms will be held to the same standards. So I think unless people are freelancing and doing 1099 and like never going into an office and 100% remote, I think in many cases, people will still be held to the same standard. That said, companies are going to be offering weekly testing, so that's the other option, right? And I think a lot of people who aren't comfortable with the vaccine are going to just do the testing thing, is my understanding of what we're hearing. But I'm not hearing a lot of people being like, I'm out of here. Sarah, hi, Sarah. What are some ways other than a signing bonus that you're seeing candidates using to negotiate a job offer? That's really interesting. So for sure, the paid time off thing is huge. I'm also seeing some stuff that we'll get into in the next section with perks and benefits, but like asking for compressed work week, for maybe different hours, for maybe like a little bit more flexibility than is the norm. I mean, I'm seeing people who like are choosing to work on the weekend because of whatever they're dealing with, like personally, and they're still like a normal full-time employee. Like we're seeing a lot of variables there. Blake, how has that flexible workforce changed over the last few years? Is that a dramatic shift to more supply and demand of freelance contractors? Well, the last few years are the weirdest time of my life and everyone else's. So I feel like that's not really a good microcosm of like the norm. But in Atlanta, we've always had a really healthy freelance and contract buzzing community in the creative space. I mean, I've been working in this space for 12 and a half years in Atlanta, and that has been thriving that entire time. There are situations, I would say maybe over the last 6 to 8 months, the market has swayed more heavily perm in Atlanta and actually nationally too, because so many companies lost those strategy level leadership folks through the pandemic. Loss in a lot of cases, they let them go, for various reasons throughout the pandemic. But so there was a big swing towards perm and management and strategy roles over the last 6 to 8 months. Like I said, we're really starting to see that kind of heavily and very quickly swing back this way. And my personal assessment of that is something I've seen happen in the past is like, now these people are in their new roles, they're getting acclimated to the jobs, the project, the workflow, what's coming down the pike, and they're getting their arms around the business. And then they're saying, oh shoot, I don't have a team. Like, how the heck am I going to do all this? And then they're calling us or calling their freelance friends or whatever it is. And that's when we start to see that explosion and flurry of work on the back end. And that is what we're seeing now, I think. So it's been weird because of COVID, but I expect to see more of this flexible workforce heading into the future too. Who knows how long that will last. John, hi. Is there a recommendation on listing your vaccine status on your resume? Ooh, that's a new one. I mean, I don't know. I probably wouldn't. A lot of companies are asking that as part of the like tail end of the process of just like, would you be comfortable self-certifying, or we do have a vaccine mandate at our company already. Like, can you provide your vaccine card or whatever? I don't know. That's a great question. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know. Anything else? I was only looking at the Q&A. I wasn't looking at the chat. Was there anything
We're
over there?
good.
Okay.
Everything
All right,
got
cool.
to the Q&A.
Awesome. All right. I think we're right on time. I hope so. All right.
We've
So we're
got
gonna move
20
over.
minutes left, so
All right.
we'll
So we're gonna
streamline.
move over to the perks and bennies side. Okie dokie. So supply and demand. So these are what employees most want, and these are what employers are offering most frequently. I just read a really interesting LinkedIn post that was like, what employees no longer want ping pong tables and beer on Fridays, right? Like that is not the stuff that gets people to accept or stay in a role anymore. It used to be, and even for teams that are on site, like that still isn't not cutting it anymore. So we're fairly aligned with what's being offered and everything. here though, I mean, dental insurance, I guess a lot of companies don't offer dental. I don't know. So maybe think about that because that could set you apart. This section is pretty interesting though. So the like gray blue is most wanted by employees, and then the blue is most offered by employers. So this is currently like now, not post-pandemic. So now 66% of employees say that they want flexible work schedules, and 47% are offering that. Remote work options. So 56% of employees say they want that, and 37% are offering it. I think, and this remote number keeps going down, ticking down as we get, closer to January. Employee discounts. So 37% say that's important to them. 32% offer it. That's not something that people are like, I'm not taking a job because they don't give me a discount on my AT&T. Like that's not a determining factor in someone choosing a career path. And then 27% of employees say that they want paid parental leave, and 37% of companies offer it. Now that's interesting. And I think this is like a byproduct of, unless you are like about to have a child, this is not something that you typically think about. But companies need to get on board and offer it, in my opinion. So post-pandemic, this is some other tidbits. So it's interesting to see that most companies have listened, right? Because over here, the candidate or the employee was always the higher one. So companies are listening, and they're actually changing things, right? So they're changing policies and being more reflective of what folks want. So 66% of companies are going to offer flex time in the future. 76% of companies are going to offer remote work options. I love that for us. And then love this one. 65% of companies are going to offer a compressed work week option. So what does that look like? There's already one company in the Atlanta metro area that has been doing compressed work week 410s for years now, because they're kind of outside of the city and it's a little bit hard to get folks to come into the office. I was talking to one of my clients recently, and they were like, well, I log in at the time that I used to get in my car to leave, and I log out at the time that I used to get in my driveway at home at night. So I'm really working like 2.5 extra hours every day. So if you add that up, there's your Friday. And now, so companies are kind of taking in that extra workload and time spent into consideration. And so they're not even saying you got to work 410s. They're like, you're doing your work. Like, that's fine. Like, be off on Friday or whatever. So that's definitely a thing that we're starting to hear. And that is one of those bargaining chips that we are absolutely starting to see people try to utilize and leverage to get an offer to work out. And then the other thing is permanent part-time arrangements. So with, having to take on the care of maybe seniors in your family, or dealing with children and different, COVID restrictions and things like that. A lot of teams found that parents were the most under pressure to continue delivering, feeling like they were an active and healthy, helpful part of the team while not getting burned out and still having opportunities. And so what we've seen is emerging from that is this really interesting like hybrid schedule or job sharing, or different like arrangements that are just creative and unique to that individual's situation, that are allowing companies to retain their top talent, keep their best people, and make sure that person can continue working and still balance everything. And that's huge. And that's a great look. And that's a really good an employee attraction thing you can do, because if they see you doing that for other folks who are proven talent and top performers, that shows, hey, you really care about your people. Hey, you really, want to work things out. You're a creative company that figured out this weird situation and made it work. So I love that. I think that's really cool and interesting to point out. So ta-da, here's the number. 3 days a week is what employees are saying they most want to work remotely. So that, I mean, I'm hearing a lot of 3 days a week on site from our clients, but still some 3 days remote. I've heard some like weird rules that are starting to surface of like, you can't have Monday or Friday as your work from home days. And, I know there's reasons for that. And I think that the companies that are more flexible and not arbitrary with just saying, well, you got to be here Tuesday because I said you got to be here Tuesday, but like, oh, okay, Tuesday is like our strategy meeting day. That's when we do X, Y, and Z. It makes sense for everybody to be here. We're not wasting people's time. We're not making them sit in traffic, mindlessly for no reason. And having some real strategy behind why those days make sense and making sure that the employees are part of the decision-making process for what makes sense for them personally and for the team at large as well. And I think that's when it's the most successful hybrid situation. So something to, mull over for yourself or your team. So we're seeing through the pandemic, a lot of companies adding additional perks. So 88% of HR managers said that they're adding stuff, a lot of wellness programs, mental health resources, stipends to improve your home office, additional paid family leave, and then childcare assistance. So we're seeing that stuff kind of cropping up across the board. Something to note if you're, reviewing that for next year. So 95% of companies will be offering like gym memberships and other physical wellness benefits, and 91% offering mental wellness benefits. I love that. Financial wellness. So yeah, 91% are offering like additional retirement planning and, and advisors and stuff like that. So that is the most of it for the perks and benefits situation. So answering your question, Blake. So if 2 weeks is no longer the PTO norm, what is it? I'm seeing 3 to 4 weeks. I mean, 3 is like pretty average, 4 for more seasoned people. Because in a lot of cases, those folks like would have been at their last company for a good chunk of time. They would have that. I think, if you add it up, you got, if you got 2 weeks, you got one at Thanksgiving, you got one at the holidays at the end of the year, that's it, you're done. Or, companies that's not a thing anymore. And even 3 weeks, like you might get one summer vacation week then or something. I think too, with the advent of our remote working and hybrid scenarios, people are able to still travel or spend time with family and do other things that they weren't previously able to, that allows them to maybe take the most advantage of the time they are given. But between 3 and 4 weeks is kind of what we're seeing, or unlimited is a thing. But again, people don't necessarily take the unlimited. So like maybe unlimited with like a forced minimum or something. Yeah. DC, hi DC. Large companies and agencies often have the resources for making quick adjustments and investing and pay increases, etc. Wondering if you're seeing this more at large corps than small. I would say yes. The mid-size and large companies are the ones that are, in my opinion, leading the charge with the financial piece. But there are smaller companies and small agencies and things that are maybe leading the charge a little bit more with the flexibility, the remote, and the paid time off piece too, because yes, it costs them something, doesn't really cost them something. The money piece, though, you're right. I mean, yes, we're seeing those more outrageous offers and very aggressive, like signing bonuses and things are typically coming from your bigger firms. I wouldn't necessarily say, though, that like the work from home piece is shifting on small or large. Like that's kind of across the board. And in fact, I would say maybe in Atlanta, some of the smaller companies are the ones that are the holdouts for working remotely, and they are being challenged to recruit as a result of that. Hi Matt, how long do you think this job market will stay hot? Let me get my crystal ball. Well, you're right. The pendulum always swings in the other direction. You got to strike while the iron is hot, and the iron is hot right now. I have no idea how long this is going to go on. I really don't know. I'd like to say that we'll get a good another, few years out of it. I really hope that that's the case, and I feel that it will be. But I don't know. I can't answer that. So I would say I expect 2022 to be a very good year for creative and marketing folks. I expect it to be very busy based on what our clients are forecasting, what we're hearing about. And beyond that, your guess is as good as mine. After COVID, I learned to like not predict anything because that was supposed to be like a very good year. And let's just be honest, it wasn't. What was the best platform to find jobs? Oh, me, obviously. Shameless plug, just kidding. No, there's a lot of great resources. I will always plug your own personal network. That is going to be the thing that will put you leg up every time. You know people, you are connected just by purely attending this webinar shows that you're like a connector and like trying and putting yourself out there. Like that's, yes, that is how people get jobs. Use your LinkedIn network, use your Facebook network. You're probably friends with more people that you've worked with in the past and things who have different jobs now and whatever. Hey, this is what I'm doing now. This is what I'm looking for. Anyone know anyone? You know, don't be afraid to ask, be proactive. I different people are going to have different opinions about this, but me personally, I do not have a problem at all with a nice direct message via LinkedIn to someone where there's a job that you're have applied to. So like go and apply to the job through the HR portal and do what you're supposed to do there. And then, maybe go find the person to whom you think it would directly report and send them a quick message. Hey, Susie, it's Amy from, I wanted to let you know I applied to that role. I was really excited to see it. I think I'd be a great fit because of X, Y, and Z. Looking forward to hearing from you. Whatever, something short, sweet, to the point. Don't like harass them then and keep sending messages if you don't hear back. Like that's not a good look. But I don't think there's anything wrong with being proactive in your outreach. So we'll quickly move to the next and final section. Oh, we got to get rid of this perks and benefits thing. Okay. So this is the first year that Robert Half has done and shared research on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I'm really excited and proud that we're doing it. This is an important number right here. So 71% of respondents said that they would leave a company whose values do not align with their own. And I can tell you all that as a recruiter, we absolutely hear back from people after we call them to maybe set them up for an interview or what have you. We'll hear back. They'll go do their research and they'll say, oh, I looked into that company. I don't like how they spend their money. Or I looked into that company and they didn't do anything when XYZ happened. And people will be like, not interested. No, thank you. Take me off that interview. I'm not doing it. So people are very aware of how organizations are spending their money and supporting their employees. And that factors into people's decision-making process of whether or not they find a company to be attractive to them. And folks will outright leave if it's not good. And we've seen it. So this number, I feel like is a bit not incorrect. It's not showing us what's really happening. So 93% of employees said they are at least somewhat satisfied with their company's DEI efforts. I mean, to me, that means that they're not satisfied then. Like if they're just somewhat satisfied, you know how those surveys go, like that's way over here. Like we should be way over here, right? So there's a lot of work to be done. When employees said, yes, I'm somewhat satisfied, these are the reasons why. So some said that their company's DEI values align with their own. Some said that the company is creating a better organization for its employees and customers through its DEI efforts. Some said that the company has improved its DEI efforts in the past 12 months. And some said that the company backs up its talk with action, right? So again, take that stuff with a grain of salt. I mean, to me, that means there's a lot of work that needs to be done. So companies are now more aggressively creating programs and policies to ensure that all employees are treated with respect and empathy. They're saying, and I will say too, one of the things we're seeing in Atlanta, but like nationally, is a lot of companies have invested in brand new positions for DEI focused hires and teams that are responsible for working in tandem with HR and other teams to do training and just really overseeing DEI policies and practices and reporting on that and the efforts that come out of that, which is great. And a lot of what we're seeing too in terms of making an effort is companies doing really focused and extensive trainings over a span of time, not like a one-time thing and it's done, but like ongoing, consistent DEI trainings that are across the board, literally from like the interns are in it through to the CEO, because it's not just an HR problem. It's not just a marketing consideration. It's something that needs to go throughout, to change the way that companies, work on their DEI practices. Also, companies are making DEI a key part of their organizational culture, creating a culture of belonging. That's a big one. Providing greater transparency and hiring and retention practices, and then really reporting and measuring on what their findings are. This is a good number. So 72% of senior managers said that they reported diversity has increased in the ranks over the last 5 years. That's wonderful. I absolutely love this bulleted list. I say you should print this out. You should put it on your bulletin board and say, can I honestly check yes for myself and the rest of my team every single day? And if you can, then you're doing a pretty good job, right? Of making sure that your team is supported in the little microcosm of your company that you control, right? There's some videos peppered throughout that you can look at on your own time. So 40% of companies are posting roles on DEI focused job sites, and 32% are now partnering with DEI focus groups to increase their talent flow there. This is the biggest factor in shifting priorities, is providing more education and training. So some of the larger organizations that were maybe ahead of the curve, seen as ahead of the curve on diversity specifically, had great diversity hiring numbers. But when you looked at their retention numbers 6 months, 12 months down the road, they were terrible. There was a big drop off in attrition rate. So companies really making sure that there's a path and a way forward once DEI folks are hired into the organization, and making sure that they can help root out discriminatory hiring practices from within through that, which is really positive. I will put a little plug in for the A Pledge here in Atlanta. If you're not familiar with it, it's literally just the apledge.com, and you should go and check that out, because it's a big opportunity for the Atlanta market, which is incredibly diverse, and we want to reflect that. So are there no Q&A here? Any other questions or anything from anyone? I don't know if I'm seeing any in here. We're good?
I feel like we covered it. Amy, do
All
you
right.
have a way for folks to access the salary guide?
Yep. So I can put the link to the main salary guide here for y'all. And if you have any questions, it's all hyperlinked from here. But if you have any questions, feel free to, oops, I was about to send it to myself. That would be weird. Feel free to hook up with me on LinkedIn, send me an email, whatever, get in touch. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Thank you so much, Amy.
Thank you for having me, Courtney. It was awesome. I enjoyed talking to you all.
We will post this recording in the next month or so you all can reference it again later. But yes, reach out to Amy if you need anything. Keep an eye on AIGA Atlanta's website for more events in the future, and we'll see you all next time.
Thanks. Bye.